Our next storyteller, the best advice he ever got was from his father, who told him, make sure you join the pension plan. But it was because of this he was actually able to retire after 25 years, started a new business, is able to work at Tribute because of all of that. Everything is possible because he listened to his dad. Ladies and gentlemen, Vinny Green.
Good evening. I got to steal 30 seconds, and I'll try to make it up, but I'm a long talker anyway. But I need to acknowledge these two young ladies up in the front here. They work for me. Well, they work with me. And there's something about them that they think enough of me to be here this evening rather than when it was 5 o'clock and going home. And I appreciate them being here with me this evening. They're really special, and I thank them. Whenever I'm coming to share a story at Tribute Center, I always come past the Burger King on Church and Liberty. I'm sure some of you passed it coming in. And I remember in the first couple of days of the attack, that was the triage center that we turned it into, where we brought the wounded and people who needed to be helped, if anyone was there at that time. That's what the Burger King was. But as I get closer to Tribute Center, other memories start to come into my mind. And one memory that always comes no matter what, because I'm usually coming down that street and I'm thinking about what story am I going to tell the tour group today? Because I have more than one story. I was down there for 4 months. I have a number of stories. So I don't tell the same story every time because we just don't have that kind of time. So I'm always wondering what story I'm going to tell. But before I could come to that, there's one memory that always comes into my mind. And I don't know that I could explain it or describe it to you in the way that I actually experienced it. But Liberty Street is sort of a special place to me, and not so much special in any good way. But I always remember that on that day, I was in an office building about a block and a half away from here. That was my headquarters. And I was in an office on the 16th floor. And I was looking out of that window on the 16th floor at the World Trade Center, and the planes had already hit. And at that time, I saw hundreds, literally hundreds of people running up Liberty Street trying to escape the wrath of a 110-story building coming down upon them. And as they were running up Liberty Street, the first tower came down, and there was this huge brown cloud, like brown mud of debris, rushing up Liberty Street, chasing them. That's what it seemed like. And as it got closer, it built up in speed, because if you know Liberty Street, it's sort of a man-made wind tunnel, because the building started to narrow. So as the smoke came down, it built up speed. The people are running down the street, and I'm watching them running from the 16th floor, and I watched that brown mud cloud overtake them, and they disappeared. And I'm standing in this window looking at this, and I'm wondering, like, what the hell just happened? Because, again, in my agency, I worked for the New York City Department of Investigation, which is an agency that investigates corruption in government. And part of our operation is also part of the terrorist task force. And I had gotten no word from the task force that there was any sort of problem going on. And I spoke to my guy at the task force, and he didn't tell me there was a problem going on. So I'm wondering what's happening at this point. And as I'm standing looking in the window, a few minutes passes by, and instead of that brown cloud being there, I see people coming up Liberty Street again, and they're running, so almost like a rerun, and the second building collapses. And this time, for whatever reason, it's a black cloud of smoke. And one of the speakers already said that they saw a black cloud. I think it was Peter. And when the second tower came down, it was this black charcoal gray sort of cloud. And it, too, raced up Liberty Street, overtook those people, and they were gone. I'm standing on the 16th floor looking out the window, and I'm realizing that people are dead. But it also came to me at that moment, more than at any time while all this was happening, that I was the senior manager at that agency at the time. I was the one in charge. The two managers above me hadn't made it in. I was making all the decisions. And I knew that there were people from my department, because we're a law enforcement agency, who were down at ground zero when the buildings came down. And I'm standing looking out that window, and I'm saying, if people are dead, it's likely that some of them are my people, because I knew they were down there. And I'm looking out that window, and I'm wondering to myself, Mr. Leader, what are you going to tell these people's family? What are you going to tell the mothers and the husbands and the wives and the daughters and the sons about how their loved one died under your leadership? And I didn't have an answer at that point. And while I'm standing in the window trying to deal with that, wrap myself around that thought about what am I going to tell them, there are people banging on my door asking me, what should we do now, boss? I had been in my 20th year at the Department of Investigation then, and I'd been through all sorts of training. I could scale the side of this building, but I missed the class that taught me how to deal with 2 buildings hitting the World Trade Center. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't tell them I didn't know what to do, but I had no idea what direction to give. But I didn't have a choice. I couldn't say to them, what the hell are you asking me for? Okay. I had to settle down and give direction. And my directions came more from reaction than any well-thought-out plan, so I went about giving direction. What I was feeling at that time was fear. What I was feeling at that time was anger. What I was feeling at that time was grief. But it was time for me to lead, not to grieve. So I took a deep breath, I turned around, I gave direction, and we started going about doing what we needed to do. Because we were only a block and a half away, a lot of the people were coming into our building for help. So we set up a sort of a command center in the lobby, and we're taking people in, because when you go out on the street, the people who were out on the street were walking around like zombies. They were covered in soot from head to toe, and you would ask them, where are they going, and they didn't know. They didn't even know who they were. So we'd get them into the buildings, we'd get them cleaned up, and we're doing this all throughout the afternoon, but in my mind, I'm still wondering, who's dead? Who do I have to call? Because at this point, you don't know. Nobody knew who was gone at that point for the most part. And sort of, not late into the day, but later in the day, I'm in the lobby standing near the concierge desk of our building, and I saw this person come through the revolving doors. And I couldn't tell who he actually was because he was covered in debris from head to toe, but he looked like one of the people that worked for me. And as he got closer, I was pretty sure he was one of my guys. And I'm standing near the concierge desk, and other people are around me asking me different questions. What should we do about this, that, and the other? And up until that point, I'm hearing them and giving directions. But as this person is approaching me, their voices are just going, wah, wah, wah. I'm not hearing them anymore. And as this person's coming to me, I'm saying, like, he's about to tell me something I don't want to hear. I was comfortable up until that point with the unknown. You know, I figured people were dead, but I didn't really know, and I didn't want to know. But he was coming with the news. And as he got closer, I felt myself stepping away from him, actually, to the point where I bumped into the concierge desk. But he got up to me, and the people in the back are making the wah-wah sound, and he said something to me, but I didn't hear what it was. And then he said to me, boss, and it sort of woke me up, and he said, we're all okay. He said, everybody's across the street, and they're getting cleaned up. We're all fine. And just like I'm feeling right now, as a matter of fact, there's just this emotion that went through me like a tingling, and I felt my body sort of go limp at the concierge. I didn't fall out, but it was just a sigh of relief and thankfulness. And I wanted to grab him and talk to him and ask him what was going on, who did what, when, and where. But the voices behind me started becoming clearer again. There were still people saying, boss, what are we going to do? What's next? I didn't have time to grieve or have joy, so I left my emotions at the concierge desk that day. And I haven't picked them up until today. You're the first ones who are hearing this part of my story. I've told 50 different stories at 9/11, but never this one. I left it there that day because I just didn't feel that as a leader, I had a right to grieve or show emotions at that point because there were people standing around me looking for direction. I couldn't tell them that I didn't know. If I didn't know, I had to at least make believe I knew, and make things happen. And we got through that day, and we got through the next 4 months. And we were given all kinds of assignments to do, and we did them, and we did them well. And if there's anything that I learned on that day as a leader or as a manager, it was that when it comes time to lead, try not to react, try to respond. A well-thought-out plan is so much better than a non-thinking reaction. And as I go through my training that I do now, as I go through my writings that I do now, I always take time in any writing that I do to write a piece about reaction versus responding, because I think it makes a difference in who you are as a leader and who you are as a manager. I know that the terrorists on 9/11 expected that they were going to cause all sorts of destructions, and they did. But for me, September 11th was one where They actually made me a better manager and made me a better leader. Thank you.